Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. Shocking Young and the Restless spoilers. In this shocking episode, Lily Winter's life takes a tragic turn that nobody could have predicted. Lily's fate is tragically and mysteriously sealed after weeks of stress, secrets, and increasing danger. As the drama develops and alliances start to splinter under the weight of suspicion and sadness, fans of The Young and the Restless will be left in disbelief. Amanda Sinclair and Carter find themselves on the wrong side of morality as they dig a hole and bury Lily's body in a desperate and terrifying act. However, why? Why did they go in such a dark direction? Are they shielding a loved one, covering up a crime, or concealing something far more significant than anyone could have predicted? Genoa City is thrown into disorder by this sinister turn of events, and all of the main characters will be impacted. Magnifying glass tilted left. Nick, Billy, and Nate are devastated and suspicious as authorities start looking into Lily's abrupt disappearance. Amanda starts acting strangely, and Carter's calm exterior starts to show. As Phyllis, Devin, and even Victor Newman begin to pose questions that no one is prepared to respond to, tensions increase. Is there another puppet master at work behind the scenes, or may Amanda and Carter be concealing the truth? This is more than simply a death, it's the beginning of a perilous chain of deceit, treachery, and psychological destruction that will reverberate across Genoa City. Was Lily's death the result of a broader, darker scheme, an accident, or a crime of passion? Furthermore, who stands to gain from her absence? As Claire Newman informs Kyle Abbott of Cole Howard's passing, Kane Ashby will turn down Lily Winter's farewell, according to The Young and the Restless recap for Tuesday, July 29th. On Tuesday's episode of YNR, Amanda Sinclair will discuss the removal of the dead and the police clearing Kane in Kane's office. Kane, meanwhile, will continue to hold himself responsible for the tragic drama involving Carter, Chance Chancellor, and Damian Kane. Kane will insist on adhering to his original plan back in Genoa City, despite all the mayhem and the enemies he has made. Amanda won't be certain that's the correct decision, but she won't abandon him just yet. Kyle will immediately call Claire when his phone dings to notify him that he has cell service again. Kyle will discuss Kane, also known as Aristotle Dumas' Home of Horrors, and the deaths that took place at his estate after outlining the stranding scenario. Additionally, Claire will learn that Nick Newman was hurt, but Kyle will reassure her that her family is safe. Claire will acknowledge Cole's death when Kyle inquires about him. Kyle will be shocked by the information and wish he could hold her. Kyle will feel bad about not being there for Claire at her time of grief and promise to return home soon. Following the discussion, Kyle will provide information on Cole's passing to Jack Abbott, Diane Jenkins Abbott, and eventually Audra Charles. Kyle would essentially accuse Audra of taking him on this excursion when he ought to have been with Claire at home. Although Audra will feel bad for Cole, she will not believe that she should be held accountable for Kyle's behavior. Since Victor Newman doesn't allow failure go unpunished, Kyle will be certain that Vibrante will still be there once the conversation shifts to how Victor hasn't yet snatched it away from Audra. After talking to Nikki Newman on the phone and learning about the murderous chaos, Victoria Newman will descend the stairs of the Tack house. However, neither she nor Claire will be aware of the identity of the deceased. Now that the Newmans are returning, Claire and Victoria will be conflicted about whether to proceed with their plans for a miniature memorial. Nate Hastings will attend the service dressed in a suit, but he will respect Claire's desire to hold off until they have more people around to support them. Nate will acknowledge that Audra called, but he will point out that she wasn't by herself and was unable to provide specifics about what transpired. Lily will call Nate with the shocking news of Damian's murder instead. Nate will worry about how this will break Amy Lewis and will ask a lot of questions about how it all happened. Nate will inform Victoria and Claire of Damian's terrible destiny when he ends his call with Lily. Victoria will then have an opportunity to console Nate while he attempts to comprehend everything. Billy Abbott will ponder on the train whether Phyllis Summers has continued to consider the alliance he proposed. After Billy's betrayals, Phyllis will admit that she is interested but question why she should put her trust in him again. Billy will also say that he informed Abby Winters about Chance's passing, but he believes Kane ought to inform Jill Abbott. Before Billy says they have some changes to discuss back home, Jack and Billy will have some unpleasant moments together. Billy will resist Phyllis's pressure for further details since he doesn't want to ruin the deal and believes they can talk about it later. Kane will discover Lily in her train car after he has thrown everything off his desk in a fit of wrath. Kane will apologize and acknowledge that the killings on his land will haunt him for the rest of his life. Lily won't see how Kane can make this right, even if he will hope to do it in some way. Kane won't accept that their love has simply vanished, but Lily will think this is farewell. Lily will encourage Kane to recognize that no one wants him back in Genoa City when she learns that he still intends to visit. Lily will appear upset at the thought of her ex going back to her homeland, and Kane will offer a "until we meet again." According to teasers for The Young and the Restless, Kane's return as GC will cause even more disruptions, so tune in. Kane's refusal to accept Lily's farewell sent shockwaves through their already strained relationship, leaving her feeling a mixture of sadness, perplexity, and rage. In an attempt to find closure, she had plucked up the courage to confront him one final time, but his icy dismissal only made her wounds worse. Any remaining hope she had of reconciliation was dashed by the finality in his voice and the way he turned away as like she didn't matter. He couldn't even give her the civility of a good farewell in what was meant to be their last moment together, despite the fact that Lily had loved him for years and supported him through innumerable hardships. Tears clouded her vision as she left, but pride prevented her from turning around. Despite everything, she would not allow him to know how much his rejection still affected her. Kyle was left reeling after Claire's shocking disclosure of Cole's passing, and his mind was having a hard time processing what she had said. As Kyle's initial incredulity gave way to the heartbreaking knowledge that Cole was indeed gone, the tension between them increased. Claire had spoken in a calm, almost impersonal tone, as though she were reporting the weather instead of the passing of someone who had once played a significant role in their lives. As he demanded answers, Kyle's hands shook and his voice cracked from the stress of his anger and anguish. How did this occur? Why wasn't he informed earlier? His rage was only increased by Claire's evasive comments, which gave him the impression that there was more to the story than she was disclosing. A storm was building beneath the surface of their discourse, and the tension between them was evident. Cole's humor, his loyalty, and the way he had always been there when it counted most were all vivid in Kyle's memory. He was simply gone now. As the truth of his loss set in, Kyle was left gasping for air by the finality of it, which struck him like a physical blow. He wanted to shout, to lash out, but he was stuck because of the numbness that was creeping through his body. Claire kept a close eye on him, her face impassive, as though she were gauging his response for some secret agenda. After everything, Kyle didn't trust her, but at that moment, she was the only person who could provide him with the answers he sorely needed. Their long silence was laden with unspoken charges and unresolved past events. The disregard for personal tragedy served as a harsh reminder of how little one person's suffering meant in the greater scheme of things, and the outside world carried on as if nothing had happened. As he struggled to control his emotions, Kyle balled his fists, his claws pressing into his palms. Grief made it difficult for him to concentrate, even though he needed to ponder and analyze. Previously consoling, Claire's presence now felt betraying. Why had she kept Cole's death a secret from him? Was she concealing anything else? His mind whirled with questions, each one more agonizing than the last. Lily's personal suffering, meantime, was similar to Kyle's, although it sprang from a different kind of loss. She had been forced to face the fact that their love story was really finished after Kane's rejection had revived old scars. She had clung to the hope that they could make things better for so long, but now that he was uninterested, she had to let go. It was a liberating and terrible thought. It was both liberating because perhaps, just possibly, this was her opportunity to finally go on, and terrifying since Kane had played such a significant role in her life for so long. However, letting go was not as simple as it seemed. There were reminders of him everywhere she looked, including their shared house, their kids, and the memories that persisted in every area of her life. With the past so unavoidable, how was she to begin again? The future felt like a blank space at the moment, despite her friend's advice to embrace this new chapter and concentrate on the future. She required time to mourn the relationship that had previously been her entire world. Life, however, wouldn't wait for her to recover. Even though all she wanted to do was give up under the weight of her grief, she had obligations to fulfill, kids to look after, and a world that required her to keep going. Both Lily and Kyle found it difficult to deal with their loss in different ways as the days went by. While Kyle found comfort in seclusion and pushed away those who attempted to console him, Lily immersed herself into her work, utilizing the diversion to dull the pain. Although their paths did not intersect, they were both grieving for distinct losses and were connected by a profound sense of emptiness. Ever the manipulator, Claire observed from the sidelines, her intentions unknown. Was there a more deliberate motive behind her telling Kyle about Cole's passing, or had she done it out of genuine concern? Because of her past dishonesty, it was difficult to believe her, and Kyle was aware that she wasn't entirely trustworthy. He didn't have the energy to figure out her tricks, though, since Cole was gone and his entire world had changed. He only knew that his life had been torn apart and that nothing would ever be the same. Without Kane, Lily had to adjust to a new reality as well. She could no longer cling to the man she had repeatedly forgiven, fought for, and loved. A peculiar sensation of clarity accompanied the discovery, which was a terrible pill to swallow. Perhaps she wanted a fresh start, an opportunity to find herself again away from the shadow of their relationship. For the first time in a long time, she could see a glimmer of optimism on the horizon, even if the journey ahead would not be simple and would be full with obstacles. However, Kyle wasn't prepared to let go. Cole was determined to find the injustice behind his death, which was more than just a tragedy. He would do whatever it took to find out whether there was more to the story. His suspicions had only grown as a result of Claire's evasive responses, and he would not stop until he got the truth. The only thing holding the grief at bay was the anger that burned inside of him, a fire that strengthened his resolve. Even if it meant upending the tenuous harmony that had descended upon their lives, he would pursue justice in Cole's honor. The stories of Lily and Kyle, two individuals navigating the aftermath of loss, their paths unsure but their determination unyielding, therefore unfolded in parallel as they each struggled with their anguish. The days ahead would put them to the test in ways they had not yet anticipated, making them face not only their loss but also the truths that had always been hidden beneath the surface. It was unclear how Claire was involved in it all, but one thing was for sure, nothing would ever be the same. Kane's rejection and Cole's death would reverberate throughout their lives, influencing their decisions and destinies in ways they were not yet able to predict. They had to take things one step at a time for the time being, holding on to what little optimism they could find in the shadows. As Lily silently shut the door behind her, Kane stood motionless in the dim hallway outside her suite at the Genoa City Athletic Club, his hands clenched at his sides. Nothing could have prepared him for the sobering words that followed, but she had called him there urgently, requesting to meet one final time before she left town forever. After explaining her motivations, her regrets, and her guilt, she had whispered, "Goodbye, Kane." Kane had hardly heard her, but her voice was full with emotion and her eyes had sparkled with tears. He was only able to concentrate on the shakiness of her voice, the finality of her choice, and the way she viewed him as a chapter already ended rather than a lover or a partner. And that was what shattered him, more than the betrayal, more than the gap that had grown between them since the Damien affair. She seemed to have practiced it 100 times before letting him go. The sound of her farewell echoed in his chest like a warning bell, and he could still hear the gentle click of the latch. Kane didn't knock again, though. She wasn't pursued by him. Not now. No more. Rather, he moved slowly, each stride weighed by recollections of their years spent together, child-rearing, recovering from heartache, and sharing rare, snatched moments of laughter. After everything they had been through, he wasn't sure if he hated her for ending it this way or if he hated himself more for expecting her to stay. A new kind of storm was building in the Abbott mansion across town. With her arms firmly encircling her, Claire stood in the living room with her eyes ringed in crimson from hours of crying and her blonde hair wild from the wind. She was pacing in front of Kyle, who had hurried in after getting her desperate call, demanding answers she couldn't bring herself to say. "What the devil is happening, Claire?" He repeated the question, his voice breaking beneath the strain of his anxiety. Despite opening her mouth, Claire was unable to speak. In an attempt to prepare herself for the destruction she was about to cause, she pushed her palms to her face and breathed shallowly. "At last," she said, "it's Cole." Kyle stopped in his tracks, his heart sinking. "How about Cole?" With hardly more than a whisper, he inquired. Claire's mouth quivered. She choked out, "He's gone." "Kyle." The words lingered in the air like poison. "Cole is dead." Kyle was silent for a moment. He didn't flinch. His expression instantly twisted from shock to agony. He exclaimed, raising his voice, "No, no, that's not possible. He was improving. He and I only spoke last week." "He was steady, you said." Claire shook her head and started crying again. "An incident occurred. In the medical facility. It took them several hours to tell me. Before they could take any action, he was gone." Kyle plopped down hard on the sofa's edge, exhausted. His relative. His closest companion. The child who used to follow him around the Abbott residence while wearing a baseball glove that was too large for his hand. Lost. The news of Cole's passing had not yet reached Kane as he strolled around Genoa City in the foggy, early evening light. His emotions numb, his phone silenced in his pocket, he walked aimlessly. He had not experienced the same sense of emptiness since Juliet's death and the realization that he would always be held accountable for his mistakes until Lily's farewell. He made an effort to push those thoughts aside and concentrate on anything else, but the quiet simply made them more loud. Kane had secretly hoped that Lily may forgive him and that they might be able to survive one more storm. But now that she was gone, he didn't even inquire as to her destination. She made no offer. The most painful silence was that one. He paused outside Crimson Lights and gazed at the warm glow inside through the glass. Families chuckled. Friends gave each other hugs. Over steaming drinks, couples leaned close. He briefly envied their normalcy. He didn't enter, though. His environment was getting progressively colder as he stood there on the pavement like a ghost. Kyle was in a downward spiral back at the Abbott residence. With her knees drawn to her chest, Claire had slumped into the couch's corner. "I should have been there," she muttered repeatedly. Kyle was unable to listen. "I should have known something was wrong." He had trouble staying still. With tears running down his cheeks, he rushed into the kitchen and clutched the counter. Word quickly spread as his phone buzzed on the granite and lit up with messages from family members, including Phyllis, Jack, and Summer. He removed them all with a swipe. Condolences were not what he wanted. He was looking for answers. Claire hesitated in the doorway before following him inside. "They said he had previously asked for you," she began. Kyle made a quick spin. He yelled, "Don't," his voice cracking. "Don't say that to me." Claire's eyes filled once more, and she simply nodded before turning away without saying anything more. "I can't handle it if he was alone." Suddenly, the house seemed too large and empty. Grief reverberated through everything, making Kyle feel as though he were submerged, each breath more difficult than the last. Eventually, Kane's route brought him to Chancellor Park, where he had proposed to Lily amid a flurry of fairy lights and where they had watched the children play. Sitting on the seat with a view of the fountain, the recollection tore at his breast. It wasn't until she was directly in front of him that he realized she was coming. "You look incredible," Amanda remarked quietly. Kane raised his head in surprise. It had been weeks since he last saw her. "Amanda," he said. "Why are you in this place?" She shrugged and took a seat next to him. "I was informed about Lily. In this town, news spreads quickly." He nodded slowly. "With kindness," she said, "so it's over." "For good?" Kane gazed directly forward. "Goodbye," she said. "I'll see you later." "No, we'll speak." "Simply." Amanda gave him a handkerchief from her purse as she said goodbye. He never used it. Simply held it like a lifeline in his grasp. She said, "You don't have to be all right immediately." Kane closed his eyes and said, "Just be honest with yourself." "I wasn't flawless. I am aware of that. However, I never ceased to love her." Amanda's voice was quiet but distinct. "Love is insufficient sometimes. Sometimes the harm is too great." He gave her a serious look at that moment, and for a little moment, he saw understanding. She was aware of broken hearts. Regarding letting go before it ruins you. Claire, whose sobs reverberated off the tile, had locked herself in the guest bathroom. She was aware that, in spite of the medication, Cole's mental health had been deteriorating for weeks. She had, nevertheless, supported his battle. He wasn't alone, she had assured him. She now had to deal with the fact that their previous conversation had been over something unimportant, a joke he didn't find funny, a look she didn't comprehend. She was haunted by it now. The last message he had sent her was, "Tell Kyle thanks." She took her phone out of her pocket and stared at it. No background. No justification. Only those 3 words. It wasn't until the clinic called that she even noticed it. Now, it kept repeating in her mind like a mysterious farewell that she was unable to decipher. A noose of guilt encircled her throat. The city seemed to be holding its breath that night. For no apparent reason, Kane found himself at the cemetery, standing in front of Juliet's grave. It had been months since his last visit. Beside her, the earth appeared to have just been turned, another plot was ready. Soon to be carved, but not yet. He may have come for that reason. Perhaps he felt the loss before the press reported it. He answered his phone when it buzzed again. The voice on the other end said, "Kane." "It's Nate." Kane dropped down hard on the grass, the force taking his breath away. "I thought you should know. Cole passed away." "Cole?" he muttered. "How?" Nate paused. "Their words are suicide. However, I doubt that anyone is certain. It's difficult for Claire and Kyle." Kane put both hands over his face. "Fuck it," he whispered. He was only a child. The darkness enveloped him. Another light went out. He hadn't been prepared for one more farewell. The headlines were all over by morning. Cole Howard, 24, was found dead in an apparent suicide at Walden Psychiatric. On social media, comments were flooding in. "My sympathies." Rumors. Anger. Lily's name momentarily gained popularity, and some people theorized that Cole's mental health may have been impacted by her relationship with him. However, she was already out of town. By themselves. Without justification. No press release could overpower her stillness. Kyle didn't get any sleep. In an attempt to understand where he went wrong, he paced his apartment till dawn, reliving every moment he had spent with Cole. Claire had also not returned home. Her face was pale and blotchy as she sat on the floor of his den, wrapped in a blanket. They hardly talked. Words had become meaningless. With the first rays of light peeking through the drapes, Kane arrived home shortly after 7 a.m. He sat in the dark after removing his jacket and leaving his keys on the counter. It was quieter than ever in his universe. He imagined Lily getting on a plane and going somewhere he would never go. Of Cole, by himself in his last moments. Of Juliet, buried under earth that has been shared with another person. And he pondered how many more farewells he could endure before he was no longer there to mourn.